Betsy and Thomas here for the American Intelligence Media. And that's Betsy Ross and Thomas pain in the ass of the globalists, don't forget.
Hi, Betsy, and it's amazing that your movement has arisen again with the flag, so thanks for that super meme that you made for the American Revolution that is still apropos today.
Yeah, patriots all over the world are grabbing that and they're running with it because it's kind of a non-offensive way to say that you're a patriot. It's not the flag of the United States as it exists now, and because there is a lot of bad connotations that go with that. If you're countries that have been victimized by the military-industrial complex, you don't want to see an American flag in your country. But a Betsy Ross flag, that stands for something different. That's for patriots around the world who are standing up to tyranny. And this is the tyranny from these globalist rulers that have been suppressing humanity for thousands of years, and we're just sick and tired of it. And Betsy Ross said it's enough, and so the army's getting together, and we're going to take them down this time, Thomas.
Absolutely, and it reasserts our sovereignty over the British monarchy, which still we have not broken. We do not have our sovereignty. Corporatocracy came in and took over where the monarchy left off. And so, the East India Company, British East India Company, and the Dutch, that's what it was about the First American Revolution. It's hardly any different in the Second American Revolution.
Well, no, it's even worse because it never went away. And these patriots that are under this kind of British rule are all over the world. It's not just here in America.
And that system has filtered into our system through the Senior Executive Service. 10,000 stay-behind Obama appointees who run every aspect of the federal government and who are the generals. They literally are called generals, like the Attorney General. And they tell Trump's appointees what to do. The Trump's appointees can tell them to do something, and they won't. For instance, let's take Rex Tillerson.
Well, before you go there, let me give a quick where we're going. Today's audio, we're going to be focusing in on the intelligence community, and we're going to be looking at John Ratcliffe becoming the new Director of National Intelligence. So the SES is important here. Continue.
When Trump was elected, he had to choose people in his cabinet that would be okay for both sides, or else they would not be confirmed, and okay for the public. So, Rex Tillerson basically was one of the Exxon. He ran Exxon. It was one of the largest corporations in the world. Basically, I think they considered it to be the 17th largest economic entity on the earth at that time. So he had the face. He had the power. He had the ability to get in as Secretary of State and talk with people that he had talked with before in business matters throughout all these countries. But what happened? He wouldn't listen to Trump. He wouldn't become a MAGA. He wouldn't take orders. And the entire Secretary of State SES group refused to do anything he said. So much so that in the end, he didn't say the same things Trump said about anything. They'd go into the same meeting and come out saying different things. So he had to let him go. So you can see this happens all the time. Now, when we're talking about these appointees, let's take another appointee, Christopher Wray. He was supposed to be a straight shooter, coming up out of the FBI, but he's 100% complicit with the coup d'etat on Trump, the active coup d'etat on Trump. So, unfortunately, bad pick. But he had to pick somebody who could run the agency. He had to pick somebody who knew the dirt. And hopefully, when he picks these people, they will tell him the dirt, and then he can get rid of them.
Well, because they eventually out themselves. For example, now we've got Michael Horowitz and Bill Barr in a very tight corner. Patriots out here, good job. Because when they speak again, they better start handing over some of these gators in the swamp. Because patriots know who they are, they know the crimes, and they expect the people that have been paid by the American taxpayer to do their jobs.
Michael Horowitz has been groomed to be an attorney general, one who would be a fixer, just like Mueller, just like Comey, just like the other attorney generals that we've seen, that are fixers. All they do is fix for the political class. The political class in America is like the monarchy and the landed gentry in the United Kingdom. And so these people believe they're above the law, and they always make sure that the most criminal of all people run the top federal agencies because they can always defer any problem to a federal court, and whoever it is that appoints that judge for that case has already determined the outcome of the case. That's the way it works. So when Trump appoints people to be the head of anything, it doesn't matter, any federal agency, If they can't fight and beat the existing senior executive service members there, the 10,000 that actually run the federal agencies, they're simply going to be completely useless. Now let's take one that Mnuchin. Okay, Mnuchin or Mike Mulvaney or people that he likes that listen to him, that can get where Trump is going and do what he wants them to do and follow orders. Not the old guard, not the
resistance.
The resistance.
Obama resistance is what it is. What you're seeing, people, is you're seeing an army fighting against our army, which is led by our General Trump. And they are resisting everything they can to get anything done. But eventually they're all going to be outed, just like Dan Coates. He was a globalist pig.
Shadow government, fifth column. That's what the SES is. And Dan Coates simply fell into the problem of he couldn't order anyone to do anything. They refused to. They say, that's not the way we do things. This is a bureaucracy here. We're going to do it the way we've always done it.
But he didn't stand up. He didn't stand up for patriots and do the right thing. And the sad thing is we all know what's going on. And let me just take an aside, because I was listening to the lovely Maria Bartiromo interviewing one of, maybe it was John Ratcliffe, or no, it was Devin Nunes. And she took a bow saying that she was the first to uncover the Mifsud story. Maria Bartiromo, you're going to be the last. You are the last. The Uber drivers in the outback of Australia know about Joseph Mifsud, and they did over a year ago. So when you want to take a little victory lap and talk about how you're the first to uncover something, we're watching to see when you're going to tell us the details about the Obama stay-behind army, the senior executive service. And we're waiting, Miss Bartiromo, for you to start talking about the British connection with Richard Dearlove and the Privy Council. So, patriots, watch for Miss Maria and see how long it takes her to come to truth, because you see, this is a very sophisticated form of propaganda. When a mainstream media channel takes over a year and a half to tell you the cutting news, they're trying to keep it from you, and that's propaganda.
Oh, yes, and in that same conversation, Devin Nunes revealed what we were the first to reveal on any news agency, that these basically intelligence committee meetings and the Cambridge intelligence seminars is where all this started. Arvinder Sambai, whose name is still yet to be mentioned by,
Has Maria Bartiromo talked about Arvinder Sambai? And when she does, will she say, oh, I was the first? No, Maria, you're the last. You need to get on the Trump train and start telling people what's really going on.
Dinner with Oars with Allison Saunders. If you don't cover that story, which is out of the testimony and FOIA requests from Judicial Watch, then you're simply not an investigative journalist. You're not paying any attention. We have the top lawyer, basically the Attorney General of Britain, coming over to meet with the Oars 5 days before the Trump Tower meeting, which was conducted, the spying was conducted by Robert Hannigan, the head of the GCHQ, in other words, the NSA of Britain. We have so many Brits involved, and no one is mentioning them. They just slightly mention this, slightly mention that. No. What's going to happen is if Barr can actually get the Department of Justice, which is where the greatest evil resides in terms of controlling the senior executive service members, because they have a paymaster group of 500 DOJ lawyers, the top lawyers there, who stop everything from going forward. If you ever step out of line in the DOJ with any other opinion than what the SES top lawyers have, you don't get paid, you get fired. They themselves can't be fired. That's the reason Bruce Orr hasn't been fired. They say Andrew McCabe has been fired. I have seen no evidence of that.
SES. Peter Strzok hasn't been fired. SES.
Correct.
Christopher Wray, SES. All of them. Robert Mueller, SES. People, this is the army we are fighting. Start waking up your audience so that they know that we have something called the Senior Executive Service that is doing war with our president.
And the reason I'm dwelling on that before we go to the intelligence communities is because in 1978 and 79, when Jimmy Carter set up the Senior Executive Service based upon the Senior Intelligence Service, which was a group of basically corporate techies who we had to pay big dollars to come help the government get more technological. Basically, that's the bottom line. That was okay, except that they were, many of them, spooks and spies and NSA, and they were doing very bad stuff. But then that now has developed to every single agency, not just intelligence, so that the senior executive service rules our government, and they're unelected. No one knows they exist hardly at all.
And
you
the
can look
media
them up in the
isn't
Wikipedia.
No, and the media isn't telling you about it.
No. And when you see that Rex Tillerson couldn't get the State Department to do anything for him, he was supposed to restructure the State Department. He didn't restructure anything. Not a single person in the State Department gave him the time of day, ever. He did nothing. Okay, how about Gina Haspel? 100% complicit with the coup d'etat against Trump. She was the CIA station chief in London during the time of the George Papadopoulos frame-up. She knew it all. She is part of, well, there's a fifth column called the shadow government. The fifth column is your enemy that is attacking you from a direction you didn't expect.
Yeah, from inside.
And then they have the fourth estate, the media, also supporting them 100%. So the fifth column is basically the corporate intelligence that moved in and took over from military intelligence, that was the group that fed military intelligence to our commander-in-chief so that the commander-in-chief could make decisions. That used to be called the National Security Council, and it was the National Security Agency that ran it. And it was ran always by an admiral or a general, and it was not corporate. And those people were sworn under oath and held by the obligations of their title and their office. So that doesn't happen in corporate intelligence. So in the 70s, intelligence started to be separated away from the military. And it started to become as powerful as the military. Now we have more people in corporate intelligence with top secret security clearances than we have who are in the military with top secret security clearances. Not only that, that's where the big leaks come from. That's where all the nonsense happens. That's where the war started between the NSA and the CIA. But it's a long-standing war I'm not going to go into. But there's a war in the intelligence community we've talked about a lot.
And we've now found out that really who runs our intelligence agencies are Five Eyes, the Brits. They're spying on us through our own intelligence agencies. So no wonder they were all getting their panties in the wad in the very beginning when Trump was elected, that Trump wasn't reading the intelligence reports, or they thought that he wasn't reading. Well, they're all full of lies. And they expected him to read. And he said, no, I don't believe your lies.
That's exactly right. And the whole British connection has been completely ignored. And if the CIA was doing its job, this would be considered an attack from Britain, Italy, Ukraine, not from Russia.
Well, if Maria Bartiromo was doing her job, she would have already reported on this a year ago when we were reporting on it. What, they don't have operations as big as the Conclave over there at fake Fox News?
They do know investigative journalism, and they don't know how to even overturn a rock to look for what's underneath it. Their journalism has gone into the toilet because it's owned by 6 major corporations who all want the same thing said. But your point, well taken. The 17 intelligence communities shouldn't be that many. There should only be a few, and they should be controlled as they were before by the military, so that you can actually hold these people responsible when they lie. So, what do we have now? An Office of Director of National Intelligence. Okay, that's not military. It's basically globalist corporate. That's the reason that a Dan Coates, out of the Senate Intelligence Committee from Indiana, can be appointed there into that job. Well, how is that possible? The Intelligence Committee is aware of everything that's going on in Homeland Security and the FBI, CIA, and the Department of Justice and the State Department. No, wrong. No such thing. The Office of Director of National Intelligence was simply created on top of an office called the National Security Advisor, which is, again, another corporate. Who was the head of the National Security Advisor for years and years? Always someone who had been an oil executive. Always. Why? Because they thought that the security and wars all were based upon oil and pipelines.
Well, it is, because the fiat dollar is based upon petroleum industry, and your wars are all based on, obtaining more and more energy around the world. I mean, this would all go to an end if we would simply bring out thorium and replace all these uranium plants with thorium and free energy. If we would stop warring over what is perceived or propagandized to us as a lack of energy, we would not have all these wars. But you can't do that because then the fiat dollar would collapse. But that's no big deal. Look, right now, let's let Trump spend as much as he wants because it's just Federal Reserve toilet paper. Let him spend and spend and spend. And in the end, the Federal Reserve is going to collapse just like all fiat currency does. But it's going to be the Federal Reserve that holds that debt, not the American people, because the American people are smarter. We have money ready to roll out right now in our markets, real currency, backed by the United States military and gold. That's where we're headed.
And the U.S. Treasury, not the U.S. Federal Reserve.
Yes, we got to get the Federal Reserve out. So, when you see Trump spending all this money and Congress says no limit, just play the game. I've heard about this with people who are getting ready to go bankrupt. They know they're going to go bankrupt, so they just run up all their credit cards and spend money, and then they take it all down with the bankruptcy. Or wipe it away with the bankruptcy.
And uranium was developed at the same time as thorium. And they had thorium reactors at the same time as they had uranium reactors. But they wanted the plutonium. They wanted the weaponization of it, so they threw thorium aside and they hid it. They absolutely buried the concept of thorium. It's now coming back all over the world. America will be the last to get aboard, but we can refit every single uranium and nuclear power plant with thorium.
To fight over energy, and I don't care where your pipelines go, because we'll have plenty of thorium-free energy. But anyway, we got off the subject. I'm sorry. Let's get back on. What about John Ratcliffe's appointment to this position?
Well, let's look at James Clapper, who was the Office of Director of National Intelligence, which is the job that now Ratcliffe will have. And Dan Coates, when he was put in that position, after a very short period of time, Donald Trump gave him a directive, an order, in front of the whole world. You have 30 days to stop surveillance on Americans. It's illegal. Your job is to stop it. What did Dan Coates do? Nothing. It got worse. It got much worse. And in the 2018 election, Dan Coates, who was supposed to be in charge of Homeland Security, which is supposed to be in charge of the elections, was supposed to create absolute security for the elections. And then what did we see? We didn't see as much electronic rigging. We saw ballot harvesting. Well, right now, we just found out yesterday that California has stricken 5 million people off of their voting rolls because they don't exist. They're dead and they're gone. And yet there are illegal aliens using their Social Security numbers and their name and everything else. So what we're going to find is this election is going to be probably the scariest election for an illegal alien to vote. We know that between 3.5 to 5 million illegal votes were cast in 2016 for the president, and Trump still won now, didn't he? So what we have is the phrases of good old Hildebeest, who said that the 17 intelligence communities all agreed that, Putin was on Trump's side and that Putin messed with the election. No, later we found out that James Clapper, the liar, by the way, we should call him. He's the man who said that no American was surveilled, and then a little later said all Americans are surveilled, and then still didn't stop it. So he said that, no, the 17 intelligence communities didn't agree. None of them agreed. There were only 4 involved in what was called the Joint Investigation on Russian Meddling in the election, which came out in American elections, which came out in December of 2016. And so they spent untold. Clapper came out and told us how much money he spent. I'm not even going to quote it because it's so huge you won't believe me. And the number of people involved. Nothing was ever found. You can read the report. Sputnik and Russia Today, RT. That's it. That's all they found. And Dmitry Alperovitz had half a paragraph in there, which was a lie, who said that the DNC was hacked. All lies. So the 17 intelligence community members, the members of our intelligence community, 17 different agencies, from the geospatial to the National Counterterrorism to the FBI to the CIA, Everywhere, including the Treasury, every place that has an intelligence group, all report to the Office of Director of National Intelligence, which they shouldn't. They should report to the National Security Council, but they don't. Sometimes the generals who are told to go to war are never given the intelligence that caused the war. Isn't that amazing?
Well, it was probably a false flag anyway.
Correct. Now, we've had an agreement with the British, the Five Eyes Agreement, that we would share intelligence since forever, basically for the last 100 years, and they've been pushing it until they basically control our intelligence. And they're the ones who gave us the false intelligence for weapons of mass destruction. Remember that? They're the ones who gave us the false intelligence about the yellow cake uranium that Robert Mueller delivered to Putin, literally, physically, to Putin himself. Insanity. What was that? We've explained what that is. We have the top people in these intelligence agencies are running a different country than what we think we live in. There is not a republic. There was a corporatocracy. And that corporatocracy worked with the uniparty. It didn't matter who was in the White House. That didn't matter. It mattered in what the intelligence community told the person who was the commander-in-chief, or told the Congress, or told even the Supreme Court.
So they got upset when Trump wasn't reading their lies and their reports.
Trump, when he came to office, refused to read any of the intelligence reports. Now, why? Because the person giving them to him was as corrupt as she could be. She was working Leslie Ireland was working for 3 different departments, and she was the person who would give the only intelligence briefing to Obama throughout almost his entire 8 years, his 2 terms. And what did she know? Nothing. She was a complete idiot. And what did she tell Obama? Nothing. Unless it was something that he was needed to do. And then he would have to go back to the National Security Council, and they would tell him what to do. Remember, Michael Flynn was on that National Security Council with Obama and told him everything he was doing was wrong, and that's the reason they kicked him off. And what did Michael Flynn said? This is all wrong. We need to stop corporate intelligence. It's taken over America. We need to go back to military intelligence feeding the commander-in-chief. So, we now know that really, when it comes down to it, the top intelligence people in America have been bought and paid for by Silicon Valley. Who is Silicon Valley? They are not Americans. They're Israelis working through the Mossad, through Unit 8200, and then later through corporate intelligence called Talpiot that controls most of the high-tech startups every year. They are taking over Silicon Valley, and no one seems to notice. So the Israelis and the Chinese, that's who controls Silicon Valley. Most of the people in Silicon Valley pay no taxes if they're big earners. And they're not Americans. They are anti-Americans. And the CIA should consider them to be war actors, non-state war actors.
Wait. You mean the CIA that helped worked with the British to overthrow Donald Trump over there in London with Gina Haspel? That CIA?
The CIA, yes.
The CIA needs to be shut down.
The CIA needs to be shut
down. It
down.
is so corrupt.
Period.
It works against the American people. It is a group that sits in America, pretends to be pro-American, works against us, and then feeds the British with all the intel about us. And then on top of that, you've got Facebook that comes in and surveils you, because the ultimate goal here, people, is for this big tyranny to roll out all over the world. Patriots all over the world will be digitally controlled in their prison planet. And if it sounds crazy, everything points to it. Everything that we've been uncovering shows you that that's what their plan is.
Surveillance, targeting,
and control,
and attack, and manipulation, social manipulation.
Look what they're doing to the Chinese, weaker people.
Dragonfly. Now they came out and they say Dragonfly was never put into place, and they're telling these lies. No, they created a thing called Open Power. And then they created Chinese companies that picked up these things that Alphabet had developed through Eric Schmidt, and it basically sold to China. But then China won't take anything unless they control the company. So there are a number of companies who are all using this thing. It's like an open source programming called Open Power, and it is 100% completely filled with surveillance, targeting and manipulation tools so that the totalitarian government of China can control people. They've already killed millions of people with this. Uyghur Muslims are dying every single second that we speak. And they've already locked up tens of thousands of Chinese. And when you get locked up in China, you don't get out. Okay? You get locked up, that's it. You're done. So that's what's coming to America. It's already here. It's in Facebook. It's in Google. It's in Alphabet. It's in YouTube. It's everywhere. Why? Because the intelligence communities have sold out to the globalists.
Okay, back to John Ratcliffe. And I love his last name because I can see the rats falling off the cliff.
It's absolutely a beautiful name. And, you know, when he is speaking before the camera, he's so calm and he's so aware and he's so far beyond the narrative that I kept thinking, man, I hope this guy's a lawyer.
You mean Maria Bartiromo and the mainstream media narrative?
Yes.
Because John knows stuff. Didn't he see the unredacted FISA applications?
He's on the Intelligence Committee. He saw that. But he also saw that Richard Burr and Mark Warner and Dianne Feinstein and Daniel Jones and the whole group, I mean, the head person who was running it, James Wolfe, was put in jail because he revealed everything to his girlfriend, Alvy Watkins, who was printing it. It was institutionalized leaking. He witnessed all of that. He witnessed the setup. He witnessed the Senate Intelligence Committee begging Christopher Steele, the fake writer of the dossier, the Trump dossier, the salacious caca dossier. They were begging them. They knew all about it. So he knows all about that. So he's not starting from scratch. Now, we thought Dan Coates might do something, but Dan Coates didn't have any testicles. He had no oomph. He had no backbone. He was simply, obviously, immediately bought out because he has done nothing, absolutely nothing. What has Gina Haspel done? Nothing. What has Christopher Wray done? Nothing. What have these appointees done?
Yes, they have done.
Rex Tillerson? Nothing.
No, they have done something. They've done what they were supposed to. They held their line. They kept patriots from getting our work done. And that is their job right now, to obstruct.
Jeff Sessions is a perfect example of a Trump appointee. And then that's what he did. He actually worked against Trump in every single way he possibly could and acted as if everything was just fine. And in fact, did nothing except crazy things like search and seizure where they take your assets or put people in prison for no reason whatsoever because he has a lot of assets there, or fire off 84 missiles, Raytheon missiles, because he has assets in Raytheon.
Back to Ratcliffe.
Well, what we're talking about is appointees. So he's an appointee. I believe he's going to have the guts. He's going to have... What they didn't mean for anyone to ever have the power of the office of the Director of National Intelligence. No, there was no constitutional idea that ever came anywhere near that.
Well, since
that there could be someone that powerful.
Obama care about what the Constitution was?
Correct.
I mean, of course you want to put one person in charge of it all so that you could better manipulate that person.
Yeah, the corporations don't follow the Constitution. They don't follow civil rights. They don't follow the Bill of Rights. They don't follow anything. They don't even have any culpability when they kill people. So these corporations, these intelligence corporations came in. Let's just take, for example, Lockheed. And then Lockheed started L3. And then L3 became larger than the NSA.
Well, you can't say Lockheed without saying the Queen's golden share.
The Queen actually owns the golden share to Lockheed. Lockheed is a British company. Bet you didn't know that, unless you heard it from us. Same thing with BAE, same thing with so many of these high-level corporations that get all of the, usually, no-bid military-industrial complex contracts. But they're not really no-bid. They go back and forth, and when one of them can't fulfill the bid, then it just goes to the other one that also made a bid. And then what do? Their bids are never what they come through on. They always have cost overruns, anything to do with a plane. Lockheed has probably, if we're looking for the $20 trillion, the lady who's looking for it, trillions of dollars spent on fighter planes and bombers, and then they say they have 20 of them, they build 20 of them, but at any one time only one or two of them work because they have to keep cannibalizing the other ones to have parts to make them work. So there went trillions of dollars into whose pocket? The Queen's pocket, not Americans' pocket, because Lockheed is not an American company. We are under attack by corporations that are not American. They do not pay taxes, And they steal from us left and right. Facebook, for instance. How many government contracts will it get? How many government contracts will Google get? How many subsidies will they get? Amazon, how many subsidies? Now we're going to put in 5G, and these companies putting them in are going to get $80 billion a year in subsidies to put in 5G. No, folks, it's not what you're told. And Trump, what he's telling you is the truth. So will John Ratcliffe have the guts? He can, because he's in the most powerful position there is. Anybody below him would not have the guts because they couldn't stand up to the SES. Gina Haspel, Christopher Wray, or any of the rest of them.
Jesse Liu over there at the Department of Justice.
Now, William Barr, I believe, has some spunk. But remember, he's SES through and through. He goes for whoever it is that appoints him. So if he wants to be the greatest attorney general who could literally run for president later down the line, he needs to put Hillary and Bill in jail to start off.
It's been 66 days. I haven't seen, since Bill Barr was took his job, nothing. I don't see anything. Where are the results? Or is Epstein a result?
If John Durham doesn't have, like James Clapper had, 500 intelligence people working on that report, the joint report that was the first one, 500 people worked on it. So John Durham, the one man who's going to work on this, if you don't have 500 people working with you, you're not going to get the job done, because there are literally now, unfortunately, just on this side of the Atlantic, there's 50 to 100 people who have to go to jail. And then in England, in Italy, you're talking another 50 people. And then Ukraine, there's 4 or 5. In Estonia, there's 2 or 3. And then there's the past people who have quit. They think they're no longer working for the government. They don't have to answer questions. They can't be subpoenaed. They don't have to testify. Wrong. These are criminal activities that go to far beyond high crimes and misdemeanors. This is the worst crime you can commit. This is treason. Willful foreknowledge of treason, sedition, and basically people died. Lots of people have died over these issues. And so it depends on how you want to make the case. But John Ratcliffe, your job is cut out for you. Get rid of corporate intelligence, and William Barr, start locking people up.
That would be a great conclusion, but I'm not going to let you in there. I want you to tell me, what are the top things that John Ratcliffe needs to do when he gets his position? What are the things that he needs to do to start throwing these rats off the cliff?
Well, some of the things have already begun with Trump. Trump changed the National Defense Authorization Act to stop claiming that all Americans can be or should be considered non-state war actors. In other words, we are all terrorists until proven otherwise. That was basically built into the National Defense Authorization Act by Obama. Year after year after year, he kept expanding that.
Well, what's John Ratcliffe going to do about that?
It has been contracted. Now, because it's been contracted, the Board of Broadcasting Governors needs to now say that there can no longer be non-American foreign broadcasts in this country that are not controlled by the Board of Broadcasting Governors. And the reason is because Facebook and what they're doing, they are not just a platform, they are basically broadcasters. And what are they broadcasting? They're broadcasting their own particular form of sedition. So they need to be considered a war actor, and they need to be closed down with the authorization of the military. He has that power. He controls the CIA.
Well, we
he
need
controls
to
the NSA.
disgorge them first.
He controls the United States Air Force Security Service, the Army Security Agency. He controls all of them as the ODNI. He controls all of them, and he can tell the president these recommendations, and the president can act on them. So he needs to do that. He needs to broaden the NDAA so that no American can be surveilled, and make the language clear. He needs to end the U.S. Patriot Act, which has been changed into the U.S. Freedom Act by Obama, which basically destroys our civil rights. The ODIN is supposed to be protecting our civil rights and making sure we are not surveilled, and that if there is a Title I FISA warrant on someone, to actually surveil someone domestically in America, then you have to have 100% proof that they are a foreign agent, which is what they said about Carter Page, which was a lie. That's why Comey signed off on the national security letters, and why the FISA applications never went to a hearing, because the national security letters can override all of those, because they have to swear an oath that the person they're going after, Carter Page, or I believe that they used a FISA non-Title one, an international one for George Papadopoulos. I'm not sure they ever got it, but I believe that they probably had one on Papadopoulos, one on Flynn, one on Manafort, one on Gates. Without a doubt, these were all international activities. And they were given out, 99.9% of all international FISA warrants were given out with a rubber stamp. Domestic FISA warrants are so rare. That's the reason they didn't take that one to the FISA court for a hearing. So, John Ratcliffe, you need to make all of the FISA court application support documents all 4 times available, as Trump has said. You need to make all the page-struck text messages available. You need to make
the people that surround him, these SES people, are just going to balk at it and keep him from doing it.
Possibly, but he's their boss. What they'll do is they'll say, oh, well, we have to go through this process, that process. And he could say, we're going to override that because of the executive has ordered it. Yes. Not an executive order, that the executive has ordered it. You see, they forget, the SES members, that the president is their boss.
Oh, yeah. And when the president says jump, these SES people should be saying, how high, sir?
Yes, but they don't, because they are beyond civil servants, and they have all these extraordinary support systems that support them in contradistinction to politicians who come and go. And that's supposed to be their reasoning. SES remains. They're the bureaucracy. Everybody else comes and goes. They don't know what they're doing. They have to be told what to do by the SES. Wrong. Mr. Ratcliffe, you are the boss now. And don't let anybody tell you otherwise. And you need to now tell Trump the truth of what you found, because if you don't, you're going to go the same way that Coates and Tillerson and all the rest of them went. He'll simply fire you. Now, if you do the right thing, you can become a historic figure, just like Bill Barr, an historic figure. You can become true heroes of the Second American Revolution, and you can take back America from corporatism and corporate intelligence. And the SES, remember, the SES also controls the judiciary system. Fake justice.
Don't get me started about all this fake video footage that we're seeing with Ruth Bader Ginsburg. They must be so desperate, and she must be so medically incapacitated. Did you see at the funeral with Justice Stevens? That whole video was doctored. And if you haven't seen it, just drop down to the links below and I'll have it there. Now, let's wrap this up.
It's as bad as doctored as the one that they showed of her walking through the airport, which was simply an old video. And it was so badly doctored that anybody could notice it. And what are they trying to do anyway? You see, what they're trying to do is keep up what should never happen. Partisanism in the Supreme Court. It should be illegal.
But if any of those justices on the Supreme Court are in on it, if they know that Ruth is medically incapacitated or dead, and they're allowing this to continue on, patriots, we need to hold them too for treason.
They can be impeached, but...
Well, whatever it is, I get myself all riled up, and I may not know the legal way of doing it, but it is wrong. It is against the American people, and I don't care if you're Brett Kavanaugh or Neil Gorsuch. If you are allowing this hoax to continue to be perpetrated on the American people, you are wrong and you need to be impeached.
Or for treason if they're conscious of it. And they have to be, because everything that I have seen are only quotes that somebody said that Ruth said something.
Yeah, then you have Bill Still, who I always thought was a pretty fair shooter. He even comes out with a video the other day, Ruth Bader Ginsburg alive, and then he gets on there, and all he does is use quotes from reporters. I'm saying, Bill, you sold out. What are you doing? You're shilling for the lies and the propaganda that the globalists want to push on us. Why? Because they think that seat is a franchise and that the Democrats own that seat. No, you don't. Now, look, what's going to happen when we find out that her death certificate says that she died, let's say at the end of 18 or maybe at the beginning of 19? What happens to all the Supreme Court decisions that have been ruled on where Ruth has signed and put her name and given her opinion? That's a big fat lie. Do all of those decisions come walking back? And how far are we going to allow this hoax to continue?
We have not heard one single Supreme Court justice say that they have seen Ruth Bader Ginsburg.
I wouldn't care at this point.
Not
I wouldn't believe them. I want to see Ruth. I want to see her.
Not one of them would be able to say a quote, or neither has she stood in front of the camera. The one person in America that we all want to see speak to see if she is even cognizant, to see if her brain works, because the last time I saw an interview with her brain didn't work and she slept through the questions and then just woke up and just spouted things.
Her head was in her lap.
She can't even stay awake. And then she's had accident after accident since then. No, I don't even want to see her standing there or speaking. I want her to take a test to see if she has dementia. I want to see if she's, because her clerks are writing these decisions, folks. There is nothing there that is directly from her. And she has three times she's going to go out this summer and do things. And one of them is to the Clinton Foundation that is under 5 separate investigations. How dare a Supreme Court justice be so partisan that she goes out to support the Clinton Foundation when they're under investigation, when Hillary is going to be reinvestigated, and when she herself has not even made a public appearance, even at the appearance of the little play they put on about her life. Check where that actor is. Let's see if that's not the new double for Ruth Bader Ginsburg.
Rats! Rats! Not a mess, we confess. This is something we would rather do without. Rats! Look around, they're everywhere. It's enough to make a quiet person shout. Rats! Once this was a peaceful village with our children and their little dogs and cats. Then along came these creatures with their sneaky little features. Now our town is overrun.